When he turned his back from shoulder to shoulder, it looked like as wide as the tailgate of a truck.
And just darkness, literal darkness, just came like all over, just all over me except where I was standing.
This thing let out the most blood-curdling, mind-blowing, spine-tingling scream that you've ever heard in your life, and it cut through me like a knife.
And I knew that they were going to take me. I just knew it. And then the next thing I can remember is being levitated.
Well, when I look in there, I see two big eyes staring back at me.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Bump Podcast, a place for the believers of the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. Join us, and we'll go face to face with what goes bump in the night.
Hey there, believers. This week we're bringing Trish back onto the show. We were interrupted, some kind of technical difficulties, who knows. So we had to cut last week's short, but it worked out. It probably would have broken into a two-part episode anyway. But what I wanted to do is go ahead and bring her back onto the show today to finish her story. And we're going to get back into a little bit more about the little people. At her location now, as well as an account or several interactions, I guess you'd say, with the Mount Vernon Monster. It's a Bigfoot-like creature that she's witnessed some of the things that happen around this creature. A lot of strange sounds. Her husband witnessed some balls of light. Very interesting stories. And we're going to bring her back on the show to talk about that. And as always, I encourage you, if you have a story that you'd like to share with me, if you want to come on the show, just email me at thebumppodcast@gmail.com. Also, you can call the Bump phone, this guy. The phone number is 304-812-0553. I don't know how I turned that on. All right. Also, if there's when you call the phone, you can text me whatever you want to. You can send me an email. You can leave me a voicemail on the phone if you want. If I'm around it, I might just answer it, and we can schedule something that way too. If there's anything that you want to send, if it's some artwork, to hang up or display, if it's a book you want me to review, or stickers you want to exchange, or if there's just something you want to send, the address is the Bump Podcast at P.O. Box 1453, Chapmanville, West Virginia, 25508. All this stuff's on my social media too. You can check it out there. I just really appreciate all the support, all the love, all the emails, all the friends I'm making, all the things that are going on through this show that does not get discussed on air. I appreciate the Lord for using this show to do some outreach work. I appreciate trying to be a light. And I just pray that the Lord continues to use me and use this show to grow his kingdom. And I'm not going to get too far into details on that, but I pray that this show benefits you and bears good fruit. Yep. If you have anything you want to discuss, there's a million ways to get a hold of me. Just get a hold of me, however works for you. All right. With no further delay, let's go ahead and bring on Trish to wrap up this amazing two-part story. All right. Trish, welcome back to the show. I know we had some tech troubles, but hopefully those are behind us now, and we can get back to what we were talking about. And you had more content left to go, right?
I do. I've got a few more things.
Awesome.
So I got a very, very active life, very active house. So we were talking a little bit. I can't exactly remember the last thing that we talked about, but I think I was talking about like different things on video and like orbs and stuff in my house. And I know people have their opinions about orbs, but you know, I can tell the difference between bugs and dust and stuff. So I got lots of interesting things moving around. Some of the things have been on video, like on security cameras with night vision, stuff like that. But I also will see them sometimes with the naked eye. That doesn't happen all the time. They tend to either be they're like little yellowish balls of light. Sometimes they're bright blue. There's been one that I've caught kind of floating next to the side of the bed where I sleep. Like I'll wake up feeling like I'm being looked at. And when I wake up, I'll see like a little flash. It's a tiny little like electric blue light that will then zip off. It's only happened 2 or 3 times, but it's like, okay, you can, like, that's cool. Just don't touch me. Like that's one of the rules in the house is like, you can talk to me. I don't care if I see you, but don't touch.
Seeing it's enough for me. I don't think I want to see an orb beside my bed. Nope, I'm good.
They're everywhere. I mean, like you can't. They're just always there. So it's not really freaky to me, as long as I don't feel anything negative. Like our barometer basically is if my husband acknowledges it and says like you need to clear the house, or I notice that the pets are getting uncomfortable because the activity is ramping up, then I'll go clear it. No, I don't do like a clean slate. Like I don't just completely wipe everything out of the house. I'm very specific when I do a cleansing, and I use kind of a lot of different things. Like I'll do, I consider myself a Christian, so I use prayer. I'm calling upon the power of God to do it.
Right.
Like I'm not doing it. I'm asking for help to do it. But I use sage. I use holy water. Like I things that are meaningful to me that I feel are powerful. That because it's your intent and it's what you believe works. Like if I don't believe sage is going to do anything, I can sage the heck out of my house and it's not going to matter. So I use things that are meaningful for me. But what I specifically do is I say that anything that is not of God's highest light, anything that intends harm or discord has to go, and everything else can stay. And so, and you can feel it. Like you can tell when something uncomfortable leaves. You can tell when something that's just playful's cool. Curious is cool, just as long as you don't mean any harm and you're not messing with my pets. Like you can stay. But like I said, I do have ground rules about I don't like to be touched, because sometimes there was something that would be at the side of my bed that would kind of like just like poke my side, like when I'd be sleeping, and I'm like, no. So we have ground rules, and one of those rules is don't touch me.
Right. Yeah.
It's always when you sleep, like why are you gonna wait till I'm sleeping? I guess because I'm not doing anything. But so I actually had one exception to that. Happened pretty recently. So the event that happened before, I'm laying in bed. I'm laying on my right side, and my little dog, he's a little rescue. He's a little nut job. He's wonderful, but he's a little crazy. So he sleeps in between me and my husband, and I'm facing him, and in my ear, I hear someone talk to me, and it was a very raspy voice, like if somebody has laryngitis and they're losing their voice and they're trying to make themselves heard, and they said, "Can you hear me?"
Oh wow!
And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I can hear you." So that event happened, and you kind of get a feel for when it's the same being or entity, I guess, and it wasn't anything malevolent, but it had a certain feel to it. And then like a few weeks later, same thing, I'm laying in bed and I'm facing the dog, and I'm vaguely aware that I think he needs to go to the bathroom. He'll fuss in the night, and I'm not moving yet because it hasn't completely registered. And I get 2 little pokes in my side, like to wake me up. And it was the impression that I got in my head was the dog needs to go out.
Oh wow.
And I was like, okay. So I let that one go since it was for the benefit of my dog. But I was like,
for the greater good.
Remember, I was like, don't touch me. And it wasn't like, hard or forceful. It was just pretty gentle, but just it was like if you're trying to wake someone up kind of gently, and it was like, hey, the dog needs to go out.
Wow.
I was like, oh, okay. So
Well,
I was okay
that's pretty
with it.
convenient. If I got a nudge
Yeah,
every
I
time the
was
dog
like,
needed to go out,
I'll lie.
yeah, I'd
Yeah,
take
it's
that.
like,
Maybe I would take that, just so there's less messes in the house and stuff.
yeah, like, all right, I'll let that one slide.
Yeah.
So I've had things, since I'm kind of on that topic, I've had things talk to me before. And I think it's important to point out that there are different ways that things will communicate. For me, there are 3 ways that I'll know. One of those is, like, I just know it. Like, all of a sudden, there's just knowledge. Like, don't go left, or like, there's just knowledge there. There's not a voice. I'm not hearing anything. It's just, I just know something all of a sudden. The other way is where they talk in my head with their voice.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, and again, it sounds creepy. Like, I've told my sister this, and she's like, I don't know why you are okay with this, but it sounds creepy, but it isn't. It's like, you know how you're just sitting there and you're having your bow thoughts and you're thinking to yourself. Imagine if you were having your thoughts, but it all of a sudden was in somebody else's voice. Okay. But it's in your head. You hear it. So you're not hearing anything with your ears, but you hear a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And the other way is like with the can you hear me, where I'm hearing it with my ears. And it's always, when I hear it like that, it's always raspy and like someone's trying really, really hard to communicate. Like that's, right. I feel like that takes a lot more effort. Yeah. So one of the other things that happened was, again, I'm laying on my right side. They always seem to talk in my left ear. I don't know why that is. But I'm laying on my right side, and this time I heard a man's voice, but it was that where it was just in my head, and it was just a man saying, help me. But I could tell that it was a man's voice in my head, so I'm not hearing it with my ears, but it was clearly a man's voice, and it wasn't, desperate or pleading. It was just 2 simple words. It was just, help me.
Wow. Now, have you ever checked out the history of the home you're in now? Like, was there someone that died in distress, or?
Well, one of the things that I talked about was the smoking lady that I think I helped send into the light, but that was a lady. Now, the help me, I think, so there's a guy in our driveway. so there's like a spirit of a man in our driveway.
Wow.
I feel like now I'm sounding like a crazy person, but
no, not at all. My reaction is just like, you gotta be kidding me, because that's too close to me. My driveway is too close.
Well, he was closer. I think that was him at the side of the bed. Okay. But usually he can't come in. So what usually would happen is I'll be out in the front. I have a tiny little frog pond. I raise frogs. It just kind of happens naturally because we live by a creek, but I like raising all these little frogs. I just kind of help them along. I'll be out there working, and I'm always, up to my elbows in muck. I'm pulling stuff out of the pond, and it's not a huge one, but it's my little happy place. And I'll be out at the pond, and I'll see a man walking up the driveway, and it's kind of a long driveway. And every single time it happens, it's always in my peripheral vision, but I always think, oh, it's a neighbor. And usually my first thought is, and of course it's in the summer, so I'm sweaty and gross. And of course someone wants to come up and have a chat when I've got my, up to the elbow rubber gloves on, pulling stuff out of the pond. But, right. And every time I will stand up to go talk to this neighbor, and it just disappears. But I can, as long as it's in my peripheral vision, I can see him walking up the driveway and getting closer and just coming over to where I am. But if I look at him, it stops, it disappears. Now, the reason why I think that was him at the side of the bed, and why he has kind of his location, the window that's next to my side of the bed is by the pond. It's directly above my pond, faces the driveway, and I can see the front door from my window. So we have a split level house. So you come in, you can either you have to go right, but you can go upstairs, you can go downstairs. And every single pet we've ever had, whether it's a dog or a cat, will lay at the top of those stairs and look down at the front door at the landing. And like when I had my German Shepherd, the one who was so cool, when I had the, like the Big Bang and I saw the UFOs and stuff, she would just lay there and she would watch, and sometimes she would growl, like somebody had come up to the door. And we have like a big oval of glass in the front door, so you can see if somebody is there. And so all of our pets have just, they sit there and they watch. If it's a dog, they bark. If it's a cat, they just watch very intently. And it's just, I don't know, like it's like they're seeing something that comes up the driveway and comes to the front door.
Yeah.
Now, after he asked me to help him, I tried to do the same thing that I did for the smoking lady downstairs. Right. Basically kind of just prayed about it and, kind of talked and said, like, if he's stuck, please send him on. And I haven't heard from him since. So I don't think that Can You Hear Me was him, because it was conveyed in a different way.
Right.
So we'll see.
How
if
long
something
ago?
else happens with him, we'll see this. That was this past summer.
Okay.
So if this summer, when I go out and work on my frog pond, if I see him, we'll know that it didn't work, and
Right.
I can try again.
Wow.
But
wow, that's a blessing, really. I joke about that, being too scary or whatever, but to be able to help somebody, if that's how it all works, if there's for some reason unable to or scared to make that step, that's a blessing to help them.
I think it's a blessing, and I think it's an obligation. Like if I saw somebody laying on the side of the road and they said, help me, I'm not going to be like, oh, that looked like a scary accident. Oh, well, I got to get home. Like you're going to stop and help. And to me, that's the same thing. I'm not going to stop and take a video and be like, hey guys, look at this cool crash I saw, and then do nothing. And to me, it should be the same thing with like spiritual stuff. Like if there's a spirit that is stuck and needs help, and especially if they ask for help, don't just record it, help them. Like that's a person. Like they're not in a body, but that's a person.
That's true. That's something to remember. That's a person's life, or their soul, their spirit.
Yeah. They're stuck and they need help.
That's a wonderful way to look at it. Now,
it always just irks me when people going through haunted places and they're just, all they want is audio or video, and they're not helping. I'm like,
right.
That's just cruel to me. I mean, it's not that it's not interesting. It's not that I'm not going to listen to that audio and find it fascinating, but like,
I'm in the same boat. Like, yeah, it's great that you're getting a response, but I want to know, like, how they're there. What do they see? Try to get some information, not just turn on a flashlight for me. Mm-hmm. I want, if you're getting an intelligent response, let's start digging. Mm-hmm.
And don't go into provoke. Like that's another thing. Like if a house is especially like malevolently haunted, and they go in there just like spiritually throwing open the doors and being like, hey, talk to me, do this, come at me. And it's like, people have to live there. That's like walking into somebody's house, throwing open the doors, turning on all the lights and being like, hey, come on in. Yep. House is unlocked. And then you get to go home, and now a family still has to live there. Like, don't do that.
That's a good point too. You sent me an email that mentioned, and if I'm getting ahead of you, I'm sorry, but I read it this morning, the article, the Mount Vernon Monster. I had never heard of that before.
Yeah, that the only reason I knew about it was from an episode of Strange Familiars. And I actually live in that area where the Mount Vernon Monster was seen and heard. Like it was up on people's roofs and doing stuff. And I think, so this is getting into personal opinion, but like there are so many accounts of Bigfoot type creatures that everybody thinks that it's always going to be out in the wilds. It's always going to be in the middle of nowhere in a national park. And like, no, they're everywhere. Like I live in an extremely built up area outside of Washington, D.C. Right. And there are still things that happen. So kind of a misconception that you have to live out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, yeah, you're going to get more activity if you're living in the wilds of Montana,
Right.
but you know, these things are everywhere. So the Mount Vernon Monster story was in like 1979 and 1980 that people were in a specific neighborhood near George Washington's home, his home estate of Mount Vernon, were seeing like a tall, you know, dark creature. They were hearing like horrifying screams and stuff like that. So the exact area where that took place, my husband used to live in a house that backed up to a golf course, like in literally the neighborhood where this happened. And after I heard that episode on Strange Familiars and I told him about it, he was like, oh my gosh, this actually makes sense. So he would sometimes, especially in the winter, he would be looking out the back windows or back door, and out on that golf course, he would see balls of light. He would see orbs that he was just like, oh, well, maybe it's the keepers, like they've got lanterns and maybe something's going on with the golf course. You know, it would be all snowy. And he would just see big balls of light moving around on the golf course. And eventually he realized that like the day after he would see those big balls of light out there, that there wouldn't be any footprints, like there wouldn't be any sign that anyone had actually been out in the snow. And he would see them in other seasons as well, but seeing it in the wintertime was what really drove home that he wasn't seeing a person walking with a light. He was just seeing big floating balls of light.
Wow.
We have experienced, so I've never seen anything. I want to make that clear, but I've heard a lot. And like right where we live, there's a lot of protected marshland. Like we live close to the Potomac River, there's a lot of protected marshland. We live off of a creek. So even though we're, you know, in a very built up area, we are surrounded by woods and swampland. Like there's big areas that are not built up. They're all protected. And we were taking a walk one time in one of the, I don't want to say exactly where, but in one of the marshy areas. We were allowed to. We weren't in a place where we weren't supposed to be. Right. But people have talked about that feeling of like where you're being watched like from multiple angles and you feel like a pressure. Like you shouldn't be here. Like you're not hearing words. You just have this distinct knowledge that you should not be here. And like the further we went, the more oppressive it got until we were just like you felt like at any moment someone was going to come out and just attack you. And you're not seeing anything weird or hearing anything, but it was like, we need to get the heck out of here. And so we did. I know a lot of stuff happens here at the house. I've heard, this sounds so weird, so I call it the metallic screech because I don't have a better way to describe it. You need to know that we like the cold weather, so especially when it's cold, like as long as it's cool enough to keep a window cracked open, like not all the way open, but cracked open, it is. I like to hear what's going on outside. You know, in the summer I like to hear my frogs, so the window is usually cracked, and so I can hear what's going on outside.
Right.
And I was hearing, usually when these things start, it starts with me hearing loud bangs, like weird, I don't have a better way to describe it, weird bangs that happen inside the house or outside the house that don't fit with your general nighttime neighborhood sounds. And so that is what happened this night. And outside the window, kind of by my pond, I heard this extended scream. It maybe lasted 20 seconds. And the best description, actually, this is exactly what it sounded like. So you know the first Matrix movie? When Neo takes the pill and decides to go into the real world and like that silver coating like goes up his arm, when it gets to his throat, that scream that he makes as he's pulled into the real world, it was like that. It was that exact sound. It was this metallic scream.
Oh wow.
And that was the only thing that happened that night, but it was, you know, that wasn't a fox. That wasn't an owl. It was weird. So that was, I just call that the metallic scream.
Yeah.
And that was like right outside my, I was like, okay. And then the cool stuff is so I call it owl talk. Because again, I just make up my own terms for things. Okay. I call this the owl talk. So we have barred owls.
Right.
You can look up barred owl calls. They're very distinct. I'm not going to embarrass myself by imitating it. But,
Oh no, I want to hear it. That's it. No.
Yeah. When you're not recording. But look, you can look up barred owl calls. Like, they're very distinct, and we get those all the time. So what you'll hear, so there was one night in particular, the windows cracked open, and this happened a few years ago in the fall, and I could hear, it sounded like if two owls were talking, which sounds totally Fruit Loops crazy, but it was like if, and I don't know why I called them owls, because it wasn't like you're just hearing the exact barred owl calls, but in my head, the only thing that it could be was owls, but it was like weird chatter. And it was like two things were next to our shed and just talking. And I listened for like 2 or 3 minutes, and eventually that ended. It also was preceded and followed by those weird banging sounds. Like, I'll hear bangings and scuttlings. Like, if suddenly our house was filled with like rodents and bugs or something, like you hear scurries. Yeah. And those happen before and after a lot of these owl chatter experiences. So I had heard this kind of slow-paced owl chatter once before. It was in the fall, and then in April of 2020, this was my big one. So again, I'm sleeping with the window cracked, and I heard the owl chatter, but it was like, it was going so fast. It was amazing. I've never heard anything that sounds like this. Imagine if two people were talking at the exact same time, as quickly as they possibly could. I mean, just rapid fire speech. Two people talking at the same time, but never once did their words interfere with the other. Like, imagine two conversations happening simultaneously, not talking over each other, not conflicting, but just talking at the same time. So I was actually a cryptolinguist, and I was an interpreter. So when I think language, like I see language, like especially a language that I'm fluent in, like I visualize it. I get like pictures. So I'm laying there, and I'm hearing the bangs and the scurries, and so I know it's going to be a weird night already. Right. And I hear these two things that in my head, I'm like, oh, it's the owls talking again. Because, that's what normal people think is, oh, the owls are talking again. And they were clearly on the other side of the driveway next to our neighbor's house. Like, that's about, like, they were close. Like, I could see them if I opened the window. They were just a few yards away. And I hear them talking. And as they are talking, the picture that I get in my head is like a ball of words. Like, imagine a ball of words, like where the words are just rolling over and over each other. But again, they're not conflicting or interfering. It's two rapid fire, so quick conversations just happening at the same time. Yeah. So I listened for a couple of minutes, and I'm like, okay, well, this is cool, and it's still going on. So I very quietly get out of bed. And one of the weird things was my dog didn't react. Like, he could hear it, and he barks at everything. And he was just looking and watching out the window like, I don't know what this is, but even I'm not going to make a sound. So I quietly get out of bed, and the shade is pulled down, and I want to get closer. So when I get closer, I'm kind of listening, and like there's like a little creak on the floorboard. It's an old house. And I hear a third voice. And this one, it wasn't deep, but it was bigger. I've always called it in my head the mom owl voice. So imagine like a more adult voice that's next to our front door. And it was just a couple of like woot woots, like they were trying to make owl sounds, but it was like a quick, like, okay, it's time to be quiet. Cause like she's listening, like it was obvious that I had noticed. And so there's a pause in the sound, and I'm like, well, if they're going to stop, I'm going to open the shade, so it's the kind where you can just push it up. So I go to push up the shade, and then like every idiot in every movie, I bump a picture, and it makes a noise. And there's like a little bit of lights on, but everything cuts off at that point. And then from at the very end of the driveway down by the street, I hear this huge, deep voice, which I think of as the dad voice. And it was like a single woot. And it was basically like a dad voice going like, shut the heck up. It's time to go.
Wow.
So
wow.
in my mind, it's like two little ones talking, and then a mom going, well, I think she hears us. And then dad going, she definitely hears us.
Yeah.
Everybody shut up. And then everything stopped. I mean, there were no more bangs. Like, it's like everything just like somebody flipped a switch.
Yeah.
And after like the big dad voice, like, shut up, everybody, then it all stopped.
Wow.
So that was that was my favorite. But I just call it, like, I know that they weren't owls.
Right.
But I call it owl because it's like if you were trying to imitate a known animal.
Yeah.
That's like what they're doing. And like I'll hear the barred owl call sometimes, but I'll hear what sounds like something trying to sound like a barred owl call to varying degrees of success. Like some of them are better than others.
Right.
And it's like they're calling to each, like from out in the creek area, out in the marshland. Like they're kind of just playing. But to me, it sounds like they're practicing.
Yeah.
And again, some of them are better than others.
It's interesting that you.
Yeah,
it's interesting that you talk about barred owls because that is something that I've heard a lot of people talking about. 1,000-pound owl, in the woods. It's something trying to mimic this sound. And personally, when I worked at the state park right down the road from here, we had a wildlife exhibit, and we had a barred owl in the exhibit, and every once in a while it would call. But during the day, it's pretty quiet. And I'm there for day shift hours, from like, what was it, 7:30 or 8 o'clock until 4 or 5 in the evening. But there would be times where I would be up here in the wildlife exhibit, and it would be just me about a mile deep into the woods, and these little animals, or these big animals, whatever we had in the exhibit. But I would hear owls all around me. I would have 4 or 5 owls calling, out of.
Yeah, and you can tell the difference between a real owl and a not owl.
Yeah.
And like, so I want to stress that with my experience, it didn't sound like a massive creature doing an owl call. It sounded like a full-grown man trying to, like, it wasn't super deep and resonating. Like it was something a little bit smaller than that, but trying to be a barred owl. And calling to each other. And so what I tried to do when I would hear those, after I heard the owl chatter, I was like, well, I want to record this because of course I do.
Yes.
It has never worked. I have 2 very nice digital voice recorders that are absolute bricks now. I used them to record all kinds of stuff in the house, other things that I need voice recorders for. Never once did I have a problem. But, excuse me, the first time I decided that I was going to try to record the owl chatter, that was my intent. Like I put it on the windowsill with the intent of recording owl chatter, and that recorder turned into an absolute brick. It never worked again. So I bought another one. I was like, okay, well, maybe it was getting kind of old. Used it for multiple purposes. It was fine. The moment I thought I want to try to record the owl chatter, it bricked, and it has never worked again. So it's like, once I put the intent out there that was the specific thing that I wanted to record, it stops working. Like I put it in the same place a billion times to record my frogs, because I don't know, I'm weird. I like to hear my frogs.
Yeah, that's good.
To record the frogs or whatever. And it always works. Same spot, same weather. But both times that I had the intent to try to record owl chatter or any of those other weird sounds, they just stopped working. Like they're bricks. I got to find somebody to fix them to get the sound off them. But they're just 2 very expensive little bricks now.
Yeah. That's.
They knew my intent.
It complicates the situation. You know what I mean? It's like that gets into a spiritual realm or some kind of higher.
No, you can listen, but to record it, no.
Right.
There will be no recording. So
speaking of these, these languages, these chatters and recordings, did you get a chance to listen to the newest episode of I Got Out? You're probably familiar with it already. The
With Ron Moorhead.
Ron Moorhead, the Sierra
Yeah,
sound.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, how does
that was a
well, I appreciate it, but how does what you've heard these owls? How does their chatter compare to the Ron Moorhead footage? Is it is the chatter that same
it doesn't.
speed? Don't compare.
No, it was faster. No, it was like it would take a computer to be this fast in my mind. Like it's incredibly fast. It doesn't really relate, other than that when you hear it, you know it's a language, you know that it's conversation and talking. Other than that, the sounds don't compare.
Wow.
It's completely different. I wish I had a better description. If I ever hear anything that sounds like it, I'll send it to you. But it's just, like imagine two barred owls. And although, see, when they're talking, it doesn't sound like the woots. It's like the warnings, like when they knew that I had heard them, those were like owl talk. The woo woo, stop. But before that, it was just talking. It was super fast, overlapping chatter, but it didn't sound anything like the Sierra sounds. It was completely different.
Wow. I'm so interested in that. I would love to hear that.
Me too.
Man.
Me too.
Now,
I'm like, I'll come back. Like, I won't record. Just come back.
yeah. When was the last time you've heard that?
A couple of years ago.
Okay.
April 2020, last time I heard the owl talk.
Okay.
And I tried to record after that, and they were correct. So maybe they were like, maybe I'm being punished. They're like, no more owl chatter for you.
Well, maybe they're in quarantine. It was a tough time in April 2020.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah, that is absolutely fascinating. That's cool. So do you associate that with the Mount Vernon monster? Maybe.
I do, because it's all like the same area. It's and so much of it corresponds to other like kind of Bigfoot stories, like the feelings of oppression, the owl calls being mimicked, stuff like that. Like it's just, to me, it all fits in. So even though I haven't seen anything, but I've just heard a lot of weird stuff, and with those feelings, and it being like the exact same area. Again, my husband's seeing those balls of light. Like it to me, it ties into that bigger picture of the woo version of Bigfoot.
Yeah, and people have reported seeing an upright, 6 or 7 foot tall figure, right around the wooded area, and there was a lot in that article about a wailing sound, just like this, and they described it 8 different ways, but that makes sense too, because it's unidentifiable, really, not indescribable.
Exactly.
This loud wailing, and they've never found it to be a hoax, right? It's just, who knows?
Never found it to be a hoax, never any explanation for it, because there aren't supposed to be any kind of animals around here now that, well, even if there were a lot of wildlife like that, like what makes that sound? Like what makes a metallic scream, or chatters like an owl, or has like a call that will go on for like 2 minutes, a wailing scream? Like there isn't anything that does that. Well, there is, but
yeah,
nothing you're gonna see in his.
People try to write off the chatter and the mimicking as a crow. Again, I worked in that state park for 4 years, and I was around. I caught crows in a live trap. I mean, I've been around all this stuff, and crows do make some weird noise. But a crow don't scream for 20, 30 seconds at a time.
No.
They might crackle, but they don't have a conversation like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't sound like a language. And
right.
Yeah, it's not the same. You can tell a large something imitating an owl, like, because I mean I've been hearing them for years and years. I know what the barred owls sound like.
Yeah.
and it wasn't a barn.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. I appreciate you sharing that with me. I had never heard of the Mount Vernon Monster, and that's not too far from where I'm at. Really. I mean,
I we live in a pretty neat area. There's a lot of
yeah.
cool stuff. Like
Oh,
between you, there's a lot of interesting stuff to see.
yeah. Yes, there is. Oh, do we have any other stories that you want to dig into today?
I got a couple things.
Okay.
See, I talked about the guy in the driveway. So this couple other little things in this house. So when we first moved in, so we have lots of old pine trees. We live in a very wooded area, so there are lots of trees, but there aren't any that are right near the house. And we started noticing that when we first moved in, that like if it was like a weekend and we're sleeping in, and again 7 a.m. is kind of like our magic hour, like around 7, we would hear something land on the roof, and then it was like bipedal, like you would hear a small, not like a squirrel, or we have raccoons, we have cats, got all kinds of animals. It was like a little, like if you dropped a toddler on the roof and the toddler like would run across the length of the house. And then it would like, when it would get to the area where my window is by that driveway in the pond, it's like it would disappear. You would just hear bipedal running all the way across over the bedroom, like the roof. And it would happen pretty frequently. We would be like, you wake up on a weekend, it's about 7, it's like we would listen, and yet you'd hear this thud, and then something on 2 legs running across the roof. One time it fell off, and this was cool. So whatever it was, I don't know where it would go after this. And there, to be clear, there weren't any trees that something could fall out of. Like no trees close enough to the house. Like it was just falling out of nothing. So we're laying there one morning and we hear it. It lands on the roof and it runs across. And then you hear kind of like a little trip. And then you hear this enormous splash from the pond. Like it fell off the edge of the roof.
Oh, no.
And into the pond. And we're like, holy crap. So we're in our pajamas and we jump up and look out the window, and I don't see anything. But so we run out the front door, and you can see where something landed in the pond and then like jumped out, and there were like 3 little footprints, like they were maybe 5 or 6 inches long. You couldn't like see toes or anything like that, but there were like 1, 2, 3 footprints where it came out of the pond and started to run across the driveway, and then they just disappeared. They just ended after that. But it's like it tripped that one time and fell in the pond and was like, oh crap, and started running across the driveway before it disappeared. So we didn't see it, but we still laugh about that. We're like, yeah, remember when the little thing tripped and fell in the pond, fell off the roof and
See, that's so
straight into
wild.
the pond. So even supernatural creatures like sometimes trip.
Yeah, but this is a physical body in a being that can obviously relocate somewhere. I hate to always say interdimensionally, but I'm running out of other things I could possibly say.
But you should, because it is interdimensional. I mean, that's the explanation for all of this. Everything
it
is
has
just
to be
right on top of each other. Like interdimensional is the only term that works.
Frankly.
Yeah, so
it's just going in and out of our 3 little dimensions.
Just phasing in.
Wow.
This one just phased in, had a little accident. I had to refill the pond and knocked out a lot of water. It's not that big. I was like, holy crap. You could see like the splash where it landed, like the water hit the driveway and then those 3 little footprints. And I was like,
and talking about that was jarring memories of when I was a kid. I heard things on our roof too, and I forgot about that completely. I don't know why, that's just out of my mind, but that was weird. But for you, does this do you think it goes back to the little people? Could it be the same things?
It doesn't feel bad. Like the things that I experienced when I was a kid, like the little things, those felt bad to me.
Right.
And again, I don't know if that was my fear response as a kid that it made me feel like it was bad, but I never got a good feeling with any of those. This just either it isn't malevolent at all, or I'm just more mature about it and just used to it. And I'm like, oh, okay, there's a thing running on the roof. It didn't feel the same, but it felt similar.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
It does. That's so crazy. Oh man. So you get some good experiences. You know, I don't want to see a little horned toddler with a tail run by my window, my door, or anything.
Well, that was terrifying. That was that was different. That was horrifying.
Yeah. Now, like, I don't ever want to see that.
No, I don't ever want to see that again.
But you know, that you blew my mind just now. I'll just be honest. And because I was thinking, okay, it fell in the pond. She's got tracks. And you did. You saw tracks where it got up out of there.
Yeah.
But those just disappeared.
Yeah, it was 3 tracks. And then like you could see the splash where the water came out. And then whatever it was jumped out 1, 2, 3 steps. Again, bipedal. And then it was gone. So clumsy little supernatural creature.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. Okay. That's wild.
So I don't have any more little people stories. I do have another kind of minor missing time one.
Okay.
So
let's do it.
It was, again, not like a huge stretch of time. This was quite a few years ago. This was like 2005. My grandma, unfortunately, was dying of cancer. And I had got a Red Cross message. So, I was in the service, so I was able to fly home to New Mexico. I wanted to, see her before she passed. And one of her requests was she didn't ever want to be alone. And I have a huge, wonderful family. So we all took shifts. So she was in a hospice at my aunt's house, and she was never by herself. And so this particular night, it was the night before she passed. It was me and one of my cousins, and we were, staying with grandma. And at this point, she wasn't really communicating. We were giving her liquid morphine and, just, oral medication and just trying to keep her comfortable. And it was around 4 or 5 in the morning. And we could tell that it was time for another dose. Like, you could see that she was hurting a little bit. And the den where her hospice bed was directly next to the kitchen. So we didn't have to go far to get her medicine to take care of her. So I walk into the darkened kitchen and I go to the refrigerator and I get her medication. And I walk over to the sink, and I don't have any lights on at this point because there was enough light coming from the den that I could see to measure out her dosage into the dropper. So I remember setting the medication on the sink and looking out the kitchen window, and everything was green. Like, when you look through night vision goggles and you can see like it's daytime, but it's green tinted. It was like that. Like, everything that I was seeing, it was like I was looking through night vision goggles, but only through the window. And I also realized that I could see too far. Like, I was seeing landmarks and buildings in the distance that I knew were miles away. But it was like I could somehow see like the backyard and everything in between for like 10 miles. It was the weirdest thing. So it's all green tinted and I can see too far. And then I hear my cousin, excuse me, and she calls me, she's like, Trish, are you coming with the medicine? I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. So I grab the medicine, I measure it out, and I go into the den, and I've been gone for like 30 minutes. Like, it felt like 2 seconds of looking out the window, like enough time to register that everything is green, and right. I can see too far, and then my cousin calls me, but it had been 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh heck, so I hurry up and, we give grandma her medication and she calmed down. And then actually she ended up passing away just an hour or 2 later.
I'm sorry about that.
So it was, I don't know, it was just weird. I don't know if it ties in with like her imminent passing, but it was just weird that it wasn't like your typical hospice kind of story. It's like, okay, everything's like night vision and I can see too far. And 30 minutes went by in about 5 or 6 seconds for me.
What do you think that was?
I don't know. I don't know if it's, I'm going to use the word interdimensional again.
Yeah.
Like maybe it was just, she's getting ready to cross. And so things were a little screwy and I was kind of just sensing, like maybe, 2 dimensions are coming closer so she can pass. And I just happened to see it or experience it in a weird way. It's weird because usually I kind of have an explanation, but that one, I don't know. But yeah, she did pass comfortably just an hour or so later. So
Well, thank God.
Yeah.
There's a squadron in the Air Force. I'm pretty sure I can remember which squadron in particular, but I'll save that. That had a motto of, I think it was beyond the green door. So that green light is very interesting because it was supposed to be, it's a certain test squadron, okay? And supposedly the green door was the like the portal between 2 dimensions, and it's this funky green light. So it was interesting that you say that.
Serious?
Yeah, totally serious. The one UFO sighting I had involved a really funky green light that I've never seen that color green before or after.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting that you said that. That was pretty cool.
Oh, that's kind of heard that. So actually, maybe that does make sense then. Like I was kind of looking through a door. Like I wasn't seeing something different. I was definitely seeing what I should have been seeing, but too much of it too clearly.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, that's cool. I never heard that before.
Yeah, it could have been maybe that opened up so whoever comes to receive us, maybe they were there, and you just kind of got caught in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
That is
like the most. Because I've never really known exactly what to think about that one, but when you say that actually makes sense for me.
Yeah.
You just solved a mystery, Bo.
Well,
Something I thought about for years. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's stuck with me ever since I heard him talk about that, beyond the green door. And I was like, okay, buddy. But your story kind of gives it validation, or confirmation.
I like that.
And thank you for your service, by the way. I don't know if I told you that last time we talked, but you were in the military. I'm not sure if I'm wanting to say what branch or whatever, but
yeah.
Thank you for your service.
I was in the Army. Thank you for yours.
Thank you. I know it's a whole lifetime of commitment. It don't just stop. And I just appreciate you for doing it. All right. Well, is there anything else we want to go over today?
Well, I'll give you one more quick thing.
Yeah.
Since we were talking about service.
Yeah.
So one of the, can I say, sometimes it was necessary for my job for me to travel to Russia.
Okay.
And I guess I can say it. So I would do nuclear weapons inspections. So I was an interpreter for the START treaty. So we would do nuclear weapons inspections. And so we were staying in a little place outside of Moscow, waiting for the Russians to take us to the site we were going to inspect. And again, I love cold and winter, and this was like Russia in December, so I'm like in Trish heaven. And so I've got like my window open. But I remember lying there in bed, and it was snowy outside, so things are moonlit. And I'm just kind of, I don't know, I like travel, so I was just enjoying being in a different place and kind of thinking about where I was, what I was, going to be doing, and I'm looking at, I can see the snow, and it's, again, what it's like when moonlight shines off the snow, so like it's kind of bright, even at night. It was like that, and something kind of catches my eye, like off to the right in my peripheral vision, and it was like just a rainbow cloud, like not fuzzy on the edges, but like a little floating thing of just like rainbow sparkles. I don't know, and it kind of just like came in through the door, and kind of like went to the foot of the bed and kind of paused there. And I'm just like, am I high? Like, are they, what's happening right now? Like, why am I seeing a cloud of beautiful rainbow sparkles? And then it just kind of moved off and it like went out the window.
Wow.
And that was it. So there wasn't anything more than that. It was just like, it was beautiful. I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
I don't usually see things. So I was like, oh, that's cool. So I hearing something. I saw this beautiful sparkly cloud, maybe like 2 feet across and a foot high.
Now, I'm sure, yeah, I'm assuming you didn't get to mention that to anybody with the.
I did not. No.
With the seriousness of the
what I was doing. I'd
situation.
be like, hey, you guys see the rainbow cloud? Yeah, we're going to inspect nukes tomorrow. But did you guys see the rainbow cloud float into your room and then go out the window? No, I've actually never mentioned that. Except my husband knows all my stories, but I have never mentioned that before.
Yeah.
Because I don't do that work anymore. It's yeah, I saw a rainbow cloud of sparkles, but
Right.
I'm still good at my job.
They'll be like, well, you can sit this one out, you know.
Yeah, we're gonna send you on the next plane home, Trish, because you don't need to be looking at nudes.
Oh man. Well, maybe that was just a sign of comfort that everything's going to be okay, you know.
It might have been. I mean, it wasn't. It had a good feeling to it. Like it was just kind of passing through it. It was like, oh, hey, hi, and then it just left.
That's neat. You know, and Russia's so secretive. Who knows what they got over there? You know, who knows what kind of lore, myth? You know, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And there was a part that always kind of wanted to ask. You know, like I couldn't. You know, I that's not a conversation I can have. Like, you know, when I'm doing what I was doing, but I have always wondered if they had any stories, and I did a little bit of Googling, but I never found anything that matched it. Usually they have like the stories of like the domovoys, like the little house gnomes and stuff.
Yeah.
I'd rather see a sparkly rainbow cloud than a house gnome. With my experience with the little things generally has not been positive. So
you have the little demons running by and the Greg Louganis demon off the top of the roof and right into your pool.
Yep.
Oh wow.
They are very superstitious. I remember sitting on the steps in the wintertime in front of St. Basil's Cathedral and having an old Russian woman just come up and grab my arm and she's like, "Don't sit on the cold stone, you'll never have babies." And then I told her I didn't want to have babies and she just gave me the most disgusted look and left me alone. But it's funny because they're a very superstitious culture.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Like I did another language training thing and we stayed in a dacha outside of Moscow and I had, you know, brushed my hair and I had left some hair in the wastebasket. Oh my gosh. And one of the live-in instructors was like, "You need to flush this down the toilet immediately." And I was like, first of all, Russian plumbing is not great. So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. She's like, "No, if a witch gets your hair, they can do things to you." So she like made me take my hair out of the trash can and like flush it down the toilet. I was like, okay, no.
Hey, I'd go with it. I call that situational awareness training, you know.
Oh, and it was too. I was like, okay, got it. Don't sit on the cold steps or I'll never have babies. And flush my hair at least when I'm
keep your hair in your pocket. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Trish, I appreciate you for coming on.
One more.
Huh?
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh yeah.
Oh no,
yeah,
I remembered one more thing where something talked to me. It's super quick.
Oh yeah, I want to hear it. Yeah, I'm not trying to rush you. I just take your time.
Well, and I don't want to. I feel like I'm just rambling, but yeah, I'll end with this. It was just another where something spoke to me. It was it was here in Virginia, but we'd gone to a ski resort and staying in a very nice little condo, and I could tell that something was in our space, but nothing bad. Like you know, we saw a little cat that didn't exist, or you know, another dimension, but we'd see a little cat out of the corner of our eye. And the nightstand on my side of the bed was like they had taken a tree stump and sanded it down and glossed it, and that was my nightstand, and it was a little bit wobbly. And the first 2 nights we were there, I would wake up and it would be moving, like if somebody was standing next to it and kind of just making it wobble back and forth. And I would wake up and it would be moving, like if somebody was standing next to it and kind of just making it wobble back and forth. And and I was like, well, maybe it's the ski lifts that are just outside of our room, or it could be a million different things. Kind of maybe the heat kicked on and it's wobbling, but it was very deliberate. So on the third night, it was happening, and in my head, I just kind of said like, okay, I know that you're there, but that's keeping me awake, and it's making my phone move. Can you please not do that? And it stopped immediately. And then a few nights later, we were going to be leaving soon, and so my husband's already asleep, and again I'm laying on my right side. It's always when I always talk in my left ear, but I'm laying on my right side, and I kind of just mentally said like a thank you for letting us stay in your space. Like it was a wonderful experience. Like we just felt really nice there. It felt like our place. And so I just said thank you for sharing your space with us. We've really enjoyed our time here. And it was a man's voice, and it was in my ear, but it was like, again, that thought in my head, and it was just a man's voice that said good night. Like that's all he said. He just said good night, and it was comforting, and I was like, okay, and I just went right to sleep.
Yeah.
But again, just another like where they talk to you, but it's like that one was almost a combination of both. Like it was a thought in my head, but in his voice. But I felt like I kind of heard it, and it wasn't raspy. It was just, he just said good night. It was like an acknowledgement of my thank you.
Oh, that's incredible. That's what do you call it? Is it clairaudient? Is that what it's called?
Clairaudient is where you hear things.
Yeah.
I do have a little bit of clairsentience where like you just know, like all of a sudden you just know something.
Yeah.
So, but mostly clairaudient. Like
Yeah.
I see things occasionally, but mostly I'll hear it or I'll dream it. Dream.
That's such a gift. That's so cool. And I appreciate you for sharing it with me.
I think. Well, thanks for letting me ramble. This has been really fun for me. It's nice to talk
fun
about
for
it
me
to somebody. Too. Yeah, somebody's not looking for the exit. Like, oh my God, she's crazy. Is there like a 800 number I can call to take it away? It's nice to have somebody be interested.
Yeah, this is.
So thank you.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad to give you a place that you could talk about these things, and you're not going to be judged, or nobody's going to think anything negative about it. This is just wonderful. You help me understand, because I have been so reluctant to say interdimensional things or transdimensional things or whatever, but you help take away any other option. You know what I mean? I need that kind of stuff. I need encounters and experiences like yours for me to be like, okay, I'll admit it too. It's like, so it helps me grow. So I appreciate you for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
I'm glad.
If there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and we'll wrap this one up. If anything else comes up,
Okay.
holler at me. Okay.
Okay.
Don't hesitate. If anything else jumps in the pond, or if that owl chatter comes back, let me know.
Oh,
all
definitely.
right.
I will.
All right, Trish. I appreciate you. Have a good weekend, and God bless.
God bless. Thank you.